Release the Kraken!
Hello fellow game designers, Ron here at Lame Duck Studios, and we are back working on our elf. So in this one we're going to look at doing the UVs. In the previous tutorial we went ahead and did some cleanup. We added the belt, the hoodie, and we did some work with the eye. We mirrored the eye over. Okay, so everything is kind of peachy. He's low poly and ready to go pretty much into the game engine. But he's missing color and he's missing bones, so let's go ahead and do that. Now I might break this tutorial up into a couple videos. UV unwrapping doesn't really take that long once you have it down, but just to kind of keep it simple, I'm going to shorten it up. So the first thing we want to do is let's go ahead and clear off our history. So edit, delete by type, history. That'll give us some more memory to work with here. But you can see that deleting history is only object specific. So if I select this object, you can see the history is cleared. This object, the history is still there. So I'm going to clear the history of that as well. And if I just select all my objects in the scene and do that, that'll be a little bit nicer. Okay, so the body first. I'm going to select the body. Let's make sure we're in modeling. Come over to UVs and UV editor. Now I am in 2018. 2018 looks a lot different than 2016 as far as the UV editor is concerned. So some of the tools are going to be out of place. Don't worry, we're going to go ahead and open up UV Editor. And when that opens up, a lot of times it opens with the UV Toolkit. What I like to do with this thing is just dock it. So if I grab it and kind of hover over my mouse on the edge of the UV window and let it go, that becomes part of my window, which is nice. I gotta be honest though, I really dislike 2018's layout. So for any developers that are looking for Maya, I despise this layout. Hopefully 2020 is a lot nicer. I haven't really touched it yet. So now if you look into this window, you'll end up seeing the UVs of our model. Check this out. That is atrocious. We have no idea what any of this gobbledygook is, right? So every time you create a polygon or a face or whatever, the UVs kind of get thrown into here and they're kind of wherever in space. So what we want to do is cut our model up into sizable chunks that make sense to the texture artist. So whenever you make these, pretend you're going to make these for somebody else. Because if you make them for yourself, I have people in the classroom who will be like, yep, this is good. I am completely happy with this because I can't stand doing UVs. I hate UVs and I'm never going to touch some things ever again. And they'll just kind of shove this under the rug and never do it because they're afraid of them. But really, we can't do anything with this. So just take a breather, and they're really not that bad. So think of UVs as like unwrapping a box, or in this case, think about like this upper part of the body as like his shirt. So if you think about your shirt and where the natural seams are in your shirt, that's kind of where we want to put the natural seams inside of our character. Okay, so I can cut the torso up to make like a shirt. I can cut the arms up to make like sleeves, right? The legs I can cut up to do pant legs, and the boots I can cut to do like the top of the boot, and then the feet, and so on. So that's what we're going to do here. The first thing is to project this so it's reasonable. You don't actually have to do that, but I'm going to do it here. So let's go up to UV. I'm going to come down. Don't do automatic on an organic structure, because if you do, you'll get something like this, and while this is paintable, it's kind of not the best idea. You can see the seams are like put across the body this way. And if you were to paint this in Photoshop, you'd have no idea where these are lining up, and it would cause you a bunch of headaches. So using automatic, not a good call. So go to UV, come down to planar. I'm going to hit the options here. My character is currently facing the Z-axis, so I'm going to go down to Z. And I'm going to hit project. So this is going to basically take a picture of my guy's UVs from the front. And you're like, oh, well, that looks like a cool thing. But the problem is we have overlap. So if I select this UV here, you can see there, right? I'm also grabbing the UVs over here. So if I grab him, you can see that these UVs are sharing space. We don't want that. So we're going to cut it up. Go up into edge mode. And I'm going to select around. Now, Let's see. I haven't actually tried this in 2018, but from previous experience, symmetry mode does not work with cutting UVs, so I'm going to leave symmetry off. Go ahead and select your model, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all the areas of the upper torso. So I'm going to grab around the belt. I'm going to select, I'm going to hold down Shift, I'm going to double click, and that's going to get me the edge ring around the belt, right? I'll have the belt be its own piece, I think. Come down here, I'll grab underneath the belt, hold Shift, double click. Okay, so that's my first edge loop, and you can see it here. I'm going to grab around the shoulder, so let's find the best loop here. I'll take right here on the arm, because this one's going to loop all the way around. So hold Shift, select that one, double click, it gets those. I'm going to go to the other side, I'm going to do the same thing. Just keep an eye on where your symmetry is, because I don't have symmetry on, you have to pay attention to it. So this loop won't go all the way around, it'll stop. So if I do this one, you can see it doesn't go all the way through. So I'm going to do this one. Select it, hold Shift, double click. So I have 4 lines, that line, this one, that one. I need one more around the neck. So I'm going to select this, hold Shift, double click. You can see it doesn't go all the way through because it hits that star. Same thing, hold Shift, double click. It's not going to go all the way through, it's going to hit that star. Now we do have this hoodie in the way, but luckily for us, we can use our double clicking trick. So I'm going to hold Shift, select that, double click, and then for this part, I'm going to go into wireframe, press 4. I'm going to select this one. Now I've had a lot of practice looking at a model in wireframe. This probably looks like nonsense to a lot of people, but it's not that bad. So if I hit 6, for example, and select this one, to kind of give your eyes a frame of reference, and hit 4, you can see the one directly next to it is the one that I want. So I'm going to hold Shift, double click that, and you can see that finishes the loop all the way through. And that should be like that. Okay. So all I did is selected the areas that I'm going to use to create the upper part of my character's body. Now there is another thing that I have to do, which is provide where I want to cut the back of this. Because if I do it right now, I'm going to end up with basically a kind of like an unfolded sock, and we're going to see that in just a second. So I'm going to go up to my UV window here. And in 2018, it's kind of convenient. They put cut and sew right there. So let's go ahead and hit cut and sew. And there is a cut option. If I click that, you'll see our little cuts become highlighted. And if I kind of click off, you can see that it cut those right there. So this is what Maya is going to see for our character's top. So if I go to UV mode and double click that part of the body, this is the character's torso, right? And look at that. The arms are all by themselves. The head is by itself. The belt, if I double click that, that is by itself. And then this is by itself. So we're almost there. We just got to split this, because this right here is not good enough for our project, because it's still overlapping. So let's go ahead and save this real quick, just because Maya does crash if you have bad UVs. So hit that as 12. And what I mean by that is if you have non-manifold geometry and you try to do an unfold, a lot of times Maya just goes and dies on you. So I'm going to double click this. I'm going to come down to unfold. So collapse that, I'm going to unfold. And then I'm going to hit unfold. It's going to do some thinking, and then it's going to unfold it for us. And look at that. So like I said, it's going to make us kind of like a sock that's been kind of pulled inside out, right? And that's what this is. Because Maya, as far as it's concerned, sees this as one continuous body, because it is. So when it tries to unwrap it, we get this circular formation. Well, that's not really good to draw on. It's actually really hard for us to paint this in something like Photoshop. Now, if you're doing your UVs and your texture mapping in something like ZBrush or inside of Mudbox, where you could do poly painting, and actually you can poly paint in Maya, but Nobody really does that. If you do poly painting, then nobody cares. You can paint directly on it and everything's fine. But it's a lot easier, it's a lot nicer if you were to make this look like something that makes sense for the artist, right? Because we want to pretend that we're making these for somebody else. So I'm going to hit Control Z on that. I'm going to go back into edge mode. Let's get out of wireframe. I'll press 6. And I'm going to go to the back of my character. Now I do have this hoodie in the way. Let's go to object mode. I'll select the hoodie. You can see the hoodie has UVs, but these aren't the best, so we're going to kind of ignore those for a second. For the hoodie, you can see that I have inputs in here. I want to zero these out so I can move my hoodie and not worry about it later. So let's go up to Edit, come down, or sorry, Modify, and go down to Freeze Transform. I'm going to hit Options here. Translate, Rotate, and Scale. I'll hit Apply, and you see those are now 0. So if I were to move this and then hit 0, it'll go back. That way I don't lose its position. Alright, select our back. Go to edge mode here. And then from this point, and I'm taking the centermost from the back, and I'm going to go down to the belt to here. Now I can't do the double click trick because that'll go all the way through the body. So if I select that, hold shift, double click, it's going to cut all the way through the body, which I don't want to do. You can see that's all the way through. Not what I want. So instead, I'm just going to go ahead and manually select it, click, select, 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 select. Okay, and while I'm here, I'm actually going to do the belt as well, because I need to split that too. So I'll go down the belt and get that. Cool. So where I'm putting this seam is I'm actually making it so that when I split it, it's going to split here. Now if I were doing like a tunic, I could split in the front, because that would be where like the stitches would go, and it would kind of make sense. You could also cut this, whoops. You could also cut this under the arm, because that's a natural place to put a seam. I'm not going to do that there. I'm just going to cut it in the back. Now again, it doesn't really matter where you put the cuts. In general, you put them in places where you're not going to notice the seams not aligning, or you put them in places where a natural seam would go. It doesn't really matter. It's better to do it based on your design for your model. So in this case, you know, I don't have any stitches underneath here, so throwing it on the back is fine. But you do want to kind of plan them out. So anyway, UV editor, I'm going to do my cut, and then I'll cut, and you can see we can add that cut in there. I'll grab UVs, double click on that, go down to unfold, and I'll hit unfold, and bam. So now we have a shirt unfolded, and we have the front of the shirt is here, right? We have our sleeves, and we have the back of the shirt. So we can kind of identify what all this is, and that's great. Now we do have an option to optimize, and all optimize does is it helps spread these out so that they're even. So if I hit optimize, it'll do its best to go through and clean up some of that. So this is one of those moments where you kind of like pick how you're going to do this. So when I did optimize, it kind of bunched here versus bunching there. So your choice. I'm not going to use it. You can also optimize by hand. You can grab that, and it'll give you this little bubble, and you can kind of click over it, and you can manually optimize. It's a nice thing to do. Again, totally up to you how you want these to be laid out. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go ahead and move on to the next thing. Okay, so there is the torso unwrapped. Now, I'm going to do the belt, and then I'm going to call it on this video, and then we'll start doing the other parts in the next one. So go ahead and double click on the belt. I'm going to go ahead and hit unfold. There's the belt unfolded. On this one, let me go ahead and see what it looks like if I optimize. Pretty clean. Alright, so that's good enough on the belt. Go ahead and save it here. We're going to do the other parts of the body in the next video, and I will see you then.